I want to give an overview of how Provar interacts with Sales Cloud and also how we can test Sales Cloud and show some different common scenarios that you might see in the Sales Cloud application. Now, to get things started, as always with Provar, we establish our connection to whatever we're going to be testing. This is done within the test settings section inside of Provar Automation. You'll begin by establishing a connection to your Salesforce orgs that you're wanting to test. Typically, you would start with a lower level environment. This would be like a developer sandbox. Then you would create additional profiles from that admin user to log in as. This is kind of one of the central tenets in testing, is that you always want to be testing as the end user and not as an admin in most scenarios. So you create that admin connection, and then you can create different connections that utilize it as a login as connection. We actually have a specific type for this inside of Provar. You'll just select the admin connection from the list there, and then you type in the username that you want that connection to log in as. And of course, you would put the persona or the profile name here in the connection name. Now, this gives us the capability to quickly create all the different types of personas that we want to test as whenever we're dealing with any cloud inside of Salesforce, but particularly in Sales Cloud if we want to do from a sales user perspective. Now, if you go into your test settings in the Environments tab, you'll have the capability inside of Provar to establish different test environments, which can be given a name and a description. That will allow you to create what we call environment overrides. Now, if I go into our admin connection here, you see I've already created a couple of environment overrides, and this was just done using this menu here. And I type in dev, and basically I just tell it whatever that username is in that particular environment, that's what I want to log in as whenever I'm specifying dev. This is the username and password combination it'll use. And we use that to easily switch between different orgs and keeping the same user for all our tests. So that way we don't have to update our test cases. And then when it comes time to running this in a pipeline or scheduling it through CI/CD, we can easily pass in the test environment as a parameter to make these tests dynamic and what we like to call org agnostic. Now, the way that these overrides work in practice when you're doing it locally is you'll have an environment over here in the top of Provar, and then you can switch here. So if I switch over to QA, what will happen is this connection now changes to the QA environment, as well as my sales user that I'm using to log in as. And it'll quickly refresh my metadata cache locally to make sure that I'm utilizing the correct metadata for the org that I've switched over to. So I'll go ahead and jump back to dev real quick. But that's essentially kind of the foundational layer of setting up your connections, establishing login as your different personas, establishing your test environments and test overrides. Once you have all that laid out, you can then begin creating your different scenarios in all of your orgs inside of Sales Cloud. Now that we have our connections established and we've created a couple of different test environments and we have our different users, so we have our sales user and we have our admin user, we can begin creating some test cases very easily using Test Builder inside of Provar. We already have a flow here that we're going to be looking at for an opportunity approval process. So we'll go ahead and hop into Test Builder and see what this test case is doing. This test case is intriguing because it involves two different users inside of one Salesforce org. So we're at our first pause here where we're going to be creating the opportunity inside of the UI. And you can see here as this test case is executing, you'll see the status of all the steps on the right-hand side in Test Builder. And you'll also see that we've organized this test case into different group steps in Provar to make it human readable when you're looking at it at a high level. So we're setting the initial stage, we're setting the initial close date, which is a dynamic date based on today's date. And now we've set it to where we're going to be adding some products to this opportunity. All these steps, again, were just added inside of Provar using the standard right-click, add to test case from Test Builder, which I'll get to in just a moment when we're going to be adding in some additional steps. But as we're watching this execute, you'll note here that everything is dynamic. All the data that we're using can be pulled from an external data source. It can be parameterized. And the test case that we're watching here execute, if I change my test environment to QA, I can run the same exact flow with no differences. So we can easily switch environments. We can switch between different users and profiles and all those kinds of things. So now we're going to actually submit the opportunity for approval. Once that is submitted, we'll see another connection that's going to be established to log in as that admin. And then we're going to go down to the approval history. and just go ahead and make sure that that is showing up there, which it is. And now as the admin, we can add a comment here and of course submit this approval. So now it is approved. And we'll do a quick refresh here to get the UI updated. And as the admin, again, I'm just going to mark this stage here as complete, and it'll move us into the next stage. And we'll add an assertion there to make sure that the status is approved. So if you scroll down here, it's basically just validating that this is showing up now as approved. So what we can do now is we can actually interact with either of these browsers that we have open. So we have two different tabs here. One is for our admin and the other one is for our sales user. So if we go to our other tab here, this is our sales user we still have. Now, whatever I interact with in this tab will automatically add steps based on the user that I'm logged in as. So we can interact with multi-users in the same flow very easily, and we can switch back and forth. And Provar understands which user I'm trying to utilize. So we'll already see that this is showing approved. We don't need to add an assertion or anything like that because we already asserted it from the admin side. But we are going to add a discount here. So you can obviously do this in a couple of different ways, but we're just going to go in and edit the product directly. So I'm just going to right click on this edit field and add that to my test case. Now with Provar, we have a specific way that we interact with tables or related lists or anything like that. So we'll just be looking for this product name here and we'll click add and do. And we'll notice it actually redirects us to this opportunity just to make sure it's on the correct page once again, which is fine. We can change the navigation after the fact, but all that automatic navigation is built into the tool. So we don't need to add navigation to any of our steps inside of Provar. Okay, so now I'm going to change the sales price. So I'll just right click on the sales price here and we'll change this to 50,000 and click add and do. Okay, so once that's set, we'll just save it here. And now as soon as we do that, there will be another approval request that gets automatically submitted because this is a discount of a certain threshold based on our approval process that we set up for this opportunity object. So we're going to switch back over to our admin user here. And if we do a quick refresh here, which we can build into our automation, but I'll just go ahead and refresh it manually just for now. We'll scroll down here. We'll see that approval has came through. So we can specifically assert it here by just right clicking and making sure that status shows as pending. But for now, we're actually just going to approve it directly here because I know that that approval should have come through. And if this test step fails, then I'll know that it didn't. So we don't need to add in any kind of double verification. But you see here, I'm interacting now as the admin and it knows to add this particular step on the admin screen. And then I can add some comments here. We'll just say op discount approved. And we'll approve the opportunity discounts here. And now it's showing as approved. And once again, we'll just switch over to our other tab here. And we'll just confirm that that is approved over here so we can do a quick refresh. And we could validate that by right-clicking like I mentioned before, and we can go and directly validate this approval status. So we can look for the step name that equals manager approval. So this will grab the top row here and we can check that the value is equal to approved. So we'll just add that into our test. Basically as the sales user, just making sure this opportunity is approved before continuing on. And we're going to go ahead into our next stage, which is just going to be the pricing and the quote stage. And we can click on this and mark the stage as complete. Okay, so we actually already had that in here, but we've just duplicated it. So we can just go ahead and delete this extra step. And now we're just going to reorganize our test a little bit because we've added some steps here. So what I'm going to do is just expand these to see, this is where we basically added in our discount here. And this is where we have gone through as the admin. So if we want to quickly just move these things around, we can drag these into our discount section. And we'll see those get added into there. And now for the approval process, we want to add that in as well. So we're just go ahead and make sure all these steps here get added into our approval group step. And so we've organized our test nice and neat here. And then lastly, I'll just go ahead and move our stage adjustment here. Okay, so there we go. So we're all set now, so we can continue on to the rest of our test step, which is basically just going to be closing out this opportunity. So we've basically picking off where we left here, and it's just going to assert the approved price and close out the op. So we can continue on. And this is kind of showing how Test Builder can be used very much in an interactive way. I can add steps at any point in my test case. I can drag and drop them around. I can group them. I can also right-click and jump to particular test steps very easily just by right-clicking and clicking step 2. We can set up these breakpoints. So it's very easy to create a test, obviously, inside a test builder, but we can also interact with our test case, and we can get to the point of failure very quickly. And we can set these breakpoints, and we can jump around to different points that we want to if we're trying to debug or get to a point of failure very quickly. So Provar makes that process very easy. So we see we have all of our group steps. Our test case is good. It is completed. Everything is passed here. So if we're happy with it, we can just go ahead and close out of our test builder session. Just let it know that we're done with this particular flow. Now, of course, we could take this to another level. We could add in a quote process. We could add in additional steps to send that quote to a particular party and verify the delivery of it and the status and the contents and all of that. And then what we could do is we could very easily come in and add additional parameters to this test case. If we want to make it dynamic, we can add in data sources, and we can also add in additional steps at any point in time. And what's worth even more inside of Provar is once we have some of these steps built out, like creating opportunities, submitting for approval, and these steps, which could be reused in other flows, we can extract these as different callables. So we created a folder here called callables, which are basically our test cases that are modular, smaller bite-sized chunks of larger test flows that take input parameters and have outputs as well. So that shows you a basic flow inside of Sales Cloud, but you can see the application of how you would use Provar to analyze your entire Sales Cloud org and build out test cases for your business processes that are high value.